Hello, and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to Season 2, Episode 16. All episodes are available in both video and podcast format at myweekinbaseball.com or subscribe on YouTube at My Week in Baseball. First, a couple of thank yous. One to Rose Petal Studios for the artwork and logos created for this show and website. To view more and own your own piece of art, visit rosepetalstudios.com. Also, thanks to Brunjo Productions in Nashville for our intro music. Learn more at brunjo.com. Well, as always, we've got a lot of content today, including the Tigers win it all. I'm not kidding. The next Japanese superstar coming to America, a baseball quote from Geddy Lee, Detroit's recent edition of Mark Canha, a book review of Our Team, and a blast from the past featuring a KC Royals pitcher from the 80s. Of course, we'll also have a trivia teaser and a timely limerick, our baseball limerick, along the way. So let's get right to it. We'll start off with the trivia. This is paraphrased, but it does come from theathletic.com, a publication I highly recommend. What pitcher, born in New Hampshire, became the first American to throw in both the World Series and the Japan Series? We'll have the answer and a clue a little later in the show. So let's talk about the Tigers. On November 5 of this year, 2023, the Hanshin Tigers won the Japan Series, also known as the Nippon Series for the Nippon Professional Baseball League, the NPB, which was originally founded in 1936. It was divided into two leagues, the Central and the Pacific, for the 1950 season. And this was just the second win for the Hanshin Tigers since 1950, and their first since 1985, which will be a clue in our trivia teaser. Anyhow, Koyo Aoyagi was the starting pitcher even after having a bit of a mediocre season. And he pitched very well, but he didn't quite go far enough to qualify for the win, pitching just 4 2/3 innings, but he gave up just 4 hits, a single walk, and no runs, along with 3 strikeouts. And the Tigers clobbered their opponent, the Oryx Buffaloes, 7-1 to win in 7 games. The Tigers' leadoff hitter and center fielder Koji Chikamoto went 4 for 5 in the final game and batted a robust .483 to garner team MVP honors. So I'm glad to have a Tigers team win. Perhaps one year soon it will be my Detroit Tigers. Oh, and there is a Detroit connection. In 1989, Cecil Fielder wrapped 38 homers for the Hanshin Tigers before joining the Detroit team the following season. Next, the next Japanese superstar in MLB. So one more thing about the recently concluded Japan series. In Game 6, the Oryx Buffaloes won behind the pitching of soon-to-be Major League star Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He had a complete game, gave up just 1 run with no walks and 14 strikeouts. Yamamoto has been posted and available to the major leagues, so he essentially is now a free agent. The team signing him, though, must be willing to pay the posting fee to negotiate with him, and that fee, as I understand it, will be a percentage of the final contract. So it's similar to being a free agent. But Yamamoto has been absolutely terrific. He's pitched since the age of 18 in Japan, and his stats are really astonishing. In that time, he has won 75 games, lost only 30. That's a .714 winning percentage. He has a 1.72 ERA during that time. And it's incredible. His whip, walks, and hits per innings pitched, 0.92. 0.9, less than one runner per inning. That is absolutely fabulous. He is striking out 9 batters, 9.2 per 9, and only walking 2. So his strikeout to walk ratio is like 4.5. I mean, that's absolutely terrific. He hardly ever gives up a home run, a third of a home run a game. So, I mean, this might not perfectly translate to the majors, but this guy is going to be good. And he just in 2023, Yamamoto just finished his age 24 season in Japan. So he would be coming into the majors next year for his age 25 season. And really, this should be his prime. These next 3 to 4 seasons really ought to be his prime. So whoever picks him up, this is going to be a great addition to the team. The next great Japanese star in Major League Baseball, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Next up, something to honk about. This time, it's about Geddy Lee, not a baseball player himself, famed rock and roll icon. This information also comes from theathletic.com, so I encourage you to subscribe there. It's like $1.99 a month for your intro period, and well worth it. Anyway, Geddy Lee played bass guitar for the Canadian band Rush in the 1970s and 80s, and he is a big baseball fan. Originally a fan of the Detroit Tigers from the late 60s, think Al Kaline and those great teams, and later a fan of the Toronto Blue Jays once they made their MLB debut in 1977. And this is a quote that I love. He's got a huge collection of baseball memorabilia, balls and bats and autograph this and that, all kinds of different pieces. And this is a quote that he has. He's talking specifically about collectible baseballs. And I love this part. He says, quote, "Nobody owns them. They're like houses. You take care of them for a while, and then they move on to the next person, the next custodian." And I just love that idea, the idea of being a custodian. The ball, the memorabilia doesn't really belong to you. You just get to admire it and enjoy it and take care of it for a while. And then you pass it on to somebody else. Maybe you sell it to them. In fact, he's selling off part of his collection. That's what prompted this article. Or maybe you donate. He has also donated large parts of his collection to various museums. Anyway, I just love that quote about being the next custodian. And what's your favorite Rush song? So leave a comment at myweekinbaseball.com or on YouTube. For me, it's Red Barchetta from the 1981 Rush album, Moving Pictures. So next is our Blimerick, a tribute to baseball collections. Here we go. Memorabilia he collects, Geddy Lee. Baseballs, bats, and more has he. Signed with 3,000 hits. Every batter on it is a ball signed by all attainees. And there are 33 members of that 3,000 hit club, and Geddy Lee does have a ball that includes the signatures of all of them. Now that's a lot of signatures on a single baseball. Wow. So next we're going to go on to our trivia question, see if you can answer this one. What pitcher, originally born in New Hampshire, became the first American player to throw in both the World Series and the Japan Series? Here's your clue now. It is someone from the 1980s, and this hurler pitched for the Kansas City Royals in the 1980 World Series, and 5 years later for the Hanshin Tigers in the Japan Series. The answer? Rich Gale, and he becomes our blast from the past. So Rich Gale, as far as his major league career, was relatively short. It was 7 years. He started at age 24 in the late 1970s with the Kansas City Royals. and he pitched up to age 30. His final season in MLB was with the Boston Red Sox before he then goes on to the Tigers in Japan for the 85 season and helps them to win the series. But in his MLB career, he's pretty mediocre. And if you're a Royals fan, you might remember him, basically a 500 record, 55 wins, 56 losses, and a career earned run average that is not impressive in the majors of 4.54. His best season probably was his rookie year. Age 24, he won 14, lost 8, had a 3.09 ERA and pitched just over 170 innings. He came in 4th for the Rookie of the Year and was actually included in the MVP voting that's shown here, 34th in the MVP voting. He was a little better, maybe a couple of years later, 13-9, 3.92 ERA. He has always had a pretty high WHIP, almost 1.5 runners, 1.499 runners per inning. So that's a lot of guys on the base path. So just kind of so-so for this team. He did pitch 2 seasons in Japan, and during those 2 seasons, again, he's about 500, 18 wins, 18 losses, right? Exactly 500 with a 4.42 ERA. In 1985, when the Hanshin Tigers previously won the series in Japan, the Japan series, he was 13-8 with a 4.30 ERA. So good wins. I'm assuming that team had some terrific hitting. His WHIP was, again, a little slightly lower, but not much, 1.42. So he did allow a lot of guys on bases during those time. But how exciting to be part of a winning team, a series winning team like that. So congratulations to Rich Gale and the Hanshin Tigers, our blast from the past. Next up, Detroit's edition of Mark Canha. Now, I'd like to start with this quote from Detroit's president of baseball operations, Scott Harris. So here we go. Here's the quote. "When I think about what we're trying to do here, we can spend to complement a core. We can't spend to build a core. That's not a viable strategy in this market. We are going to walk the line of being active in free agency and trades to find outside additions that can help us without blocking our young players." So well said. I think he's telling you what he's going to do. The Tigers aren't going to go for any blockbuster deals. They're certainly not looking for Shohei Ohtani or any really top tier free agents. But they do get to replace Miguel Cabrera, both on the roster, and they do have some money to spend because that's in the 25 to 30 million range that they will have available coming off the books from his contract. So Canha's a good addition. He will be going into his age 35 season, but the Tigers needed a right-handed bat, and he fills Miguel Cabrera's roster spot, so there's no particular change that has to happen at this moment. The Tigers right now have too many lefties, and Canha can play both outfield and first base and designated hitter. But in the outfield right now, the Tigers have lefties Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, the rookie Austin Meadows, who looked awfully good in center field. In fact, so good that they moved Riley Green into left, and then Akil Baddoo. So that's 4 starters, if you will. Maybe Baddoo's really more of a number 4 guy. We'll see what happens there. But 4 outfielders who are left-handed. And so by bringing in Canha, we now have a right-handed hitter. It also allows the Tigers to take their one right-handed hitting outfielder, Matt Vierling, and move him to third base. At least it seems like they prefer him at third. They can put him in the infield. And because he can play first base, it does allow Canha to occasionally spot Spencer Torkelson. Torkelson could get a day off, which he didn't really have in the current year, or he could DH occasionally. So the DH spot opens up as well. So the Tigers are picking up Canha's contract for 2024. That's $11.5 million. It sounds like a lot. It seems like the prices are really going up even for, pretty good players. He's a pretty good player. He's not a great player. He's getting a little on the older side, but I think he will help the team. But he does have great bat to ball skills. So let's take a quick look at that. So Mark Canha started out at age 26 in Oakland back in 2015. He's played actually mostly for Oakland, also for the New York Mets in this previous season. He played for the Milwaukee Brewers. He is a career hitter of exactly 250. Exactly 250, but he walks a lot. He's got a career 349 on base percentage, and I really do think that's why the Tigers picked him. If you look at his 162 game average, he averages over that many games, hitting 20 home runs. He's not going to play that many games. I'm not sure what's reasonable. I would be surprised if he plays 150. Maybe he plays 140. I'm not sure, but he's not going to hit 20 home runs. This past season, in 139 games, he had 11, and the year before, in about the same number of games, he had 13. So, a dozen or so seems reasonable. Maybe on the upper end, he could hit 15 or 16, but he's got some power, but he's not a big slugger. But he does know the strike zone. He strikes out, of course, more than he walks, but the proportions are fairly close, especially for the way the current major leagues are set up. Last year, 49 walks to 79 strikeouts, which isn't too bad. His peak year was in Oakland he had 77 walks, but he did strike out 128 times. So he has really cut down on the strikeouts by keeping the walks reasonable. He can play either corner outfield position, left or right. Thinking in Detroit, maybe it's right. I don't think it's quite as big, quite as spacious of an area. We'll see, and a little bit of first base and some DH. So I think that was a good pickup for the Tigers. And finally, a book review. And we're talking about the book Our Team by Luke Epplin. It was published in 2021. If you are watching on YouTube, I'm going to try to hold it up here in front of the screen if I can do so without getting the fadey background. There you go. You can see that is about the Cleveland Indians. It's specifically now the Cleveland Guardians. It's specifically about the 1948 Cleveland team that goes on to win the World Series and how that team comes together. And it's really a fascinating book. If you are interested in baseball, especially from that era, or if you're interested in the color line and how that changed, this is a fascinating book. It really specifically looks at 4 players on the team. It looks at Larry Doby, who is the first African-American, the first Black player to play in the American League. Of course, we all know Jackie Robinson was the first for the Brooklyn Dodgers in the National League. Doby has quite a story, and he goes through a lot. And it's fascinating to read about his time with the Newark Eagles and the Black Leagues, and then his transition eventually to Cleveland. And it is not a smooth ride. It also talks a lot about Bob Feller, who comes from the farm fields to pitch in the major leagues. And he is coming into that season. He's really the star of the team. But the interesting thing there is the bloom is a little off the rose, and fans have begun to worry that he's paying too much attention to other ventures and not enough attention to pitching for Cleveland. So he has an interesting upward trajectory and then downward trajectory with the fans during this period. And then it talks a lot about Bill Veeck. Really, technically, it's Bill Veeck Jr. Seems like everything online just says Bill Veeck. An innovator of the game, a great marketer, a great handshaker, a great speaker. He could get anybody excited about anything, but he loves baseball. And at that time, he owns Cleveland. And it's about how he brings Doby in, his relationship with Feller, his relationship with Doby. And then eventually, Satchel Paige. And that is also fascinating because Satchel Paige and Larry Doby really, even though they're both black players, they come into this with a much different mindset. They're different ages. They approach the game differently. And it sometimes causes conflict. And you'll also see that there's an interesting connection between Bob Feller and Satchel Paige in that Bob Feller has a barnstorming league that he promotes with a lot of stars. And to get money, to get tickets and sell seats, he frequently goes up against Satchel Paige. So they have an interesting relationship as well. Anyway, I think it's a fascinating book. This was recommended to me, Our Team by Luke Epplin. Anyway, about the 1948 Cleveland Indians, and I do recommend it. So that's all for today, my friends. Join us next time, because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? As always, I'm your host, Phil S. Truth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.